All right, fuck the formalities. Let's just jump right into this shit. Saudis, right?
Yeah.
We're going deep on these desert-dwelling motherfuckers.
Sounds good to me. We're gonna unpack their culture, history, and all the crazy shit that makes them tick.
So who the fuck are these Saudis anyway?
Yeah.
Everyone in that giant sandbox.
Not exactly. We're talking about a specific ethnic group. You know, the ones native to Saudi Arabia.
I thought Saudi Arabia was all about that strict religious bullshit and keeping everyone in line.
Nah, man, that's where things get interesting. There's actually a ton of diversity in their history and culture.
Diversity? Seriously. I figured it was just dudes in robes and a shit ton of oil money.
It's way more complex than that. Think ancient cities like Jeddah, Mecca, Medina. They were hubs on trade routes and attracted people from all over the damn place.
So we're talking like a mix of influences. I'm actually kind of intrigued.
You got it. We're talking Bosniaks, Egyptians, South Asians, especially in the cities. It's a real melting pot.
So it's not just sand and camels. It's getting good.
And don't forget the Bedouins.
Wait, like those nomadic desert warrior dudes? Straight out of Lawrence of Arabia.
Well, yeah, historically speaking, the funny thing is most of them aren't even nomadic anymore. They've urbanized.
So they're city folk now. That's kind of ironic.
Totally. But they still hold a lot of sway in society. The government even goes out of its way to preserve their traditions.
Okay, so we've got urbanites, desert dudes, and a dash of international flavor. This is way more diverse than I thought, but this is the deep dive, right? So what about the dark side of this diversity? Who's getting fucked over?
Good point. It's not all sunshine and roses. Take the Afro-Saudi minority, for example. Descendants of slaves, facing a shit ton of discrimination.
Ah, so even in a diverse society, some groups still get the short end of the stick. Fucked up, man.
It is, dude. It's a real uphill battle for them. Limited access to jobs, education, even basic health care. It's a messed up situation.
Yeah, seems like no matter where you go, someone is getting screwed over. All right, so we've established these Saudis are more than just a bunch of dudes in robes. But what's it like actually interacting with them? What kind of weird-ass customs should I know about so I don't piss anyone off?
Well, buckle up, buddy. Get ready for a whole lot of formality. Greetings are a huge deal, and they involve lengthy-ass inquiries about your family, your health, your work. It's like a whole interrogation.
Shit, so I gotta be prepared to discuss my grandma's bunions and my dog's constipation. Sounds exhausting.
Pretty much. But it's their way of showing respect and genuine interest. Just one piece of advice, dude. Whatever you do, don't ask a man about his wife.
Ah, so the ladies are off limits. Got it.
Yeah.
What about the whole dress code thing? I picture a sea of white robes and black veils. Is that still the standard look?
You're not wrong. The dress code is definitely strict, especially for women. Traditionally, they had to be completely covered in public.
Oh, so the whole burqa thing.
Not necessarily a burqa, but yeah, covered up. Although things are getting a bit more relaxed these days.
Relaxed. In Saudi Arabia, did the world end and I missed it?
It's a slow process, but yeah, things are changing. Women aren't always required to wear the full face veil anymore.
So, like, they're showing a bit of ankle these days. What's behind this shift?
I think it's a combination of things. There's a push for modernization, especially from younger generations who are exposed to global influences, and the government is trying to project a more progressive image to the world.
So it's like a tug of war between tradition and modernity.
Exactly. And while the abaya, that long black cloak, is still the norm, you'll see some women sporting Western clothes underneath.
So it's like a fashion mullet.
Yeah.
Business in the front, party in the back. Speaking of things that are strictly controlled, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or maybe the camel in the tent, in this case.
Religion, right.
You got it. Islam is the dominant force in Saudi Arabia. It's not just personal faith. It's woven into their legal system and daily life. Like, their weekend is Friday and Saturday, because Friday is the holy day for Muslims. Makes sense. So besides praying 5 times a day, how else does religion impact the average Saudi's life?
Well, let's just say it's a pretty strict interpretation of Islam. They only officially recognize 2 religious holidays, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha.
So no Christmas trees or menorahs in Saudi Arabia. Bummer. What about non-Muslims? Can they even set foot in the Holy Land?
Now, this is where things get interesting. Officially, non-Muslims aren't allowed to live there permanently.
Wait, so they can visit, but they can't actually, like, live there? What kind of bullshit is that?
It all comes down to their interpretation of Islamic texts and the belief that the Hijaz, the Holy Land, should be for Muslims only.
So basically, come for the oil money, but leave your Jesus and Buddha at the door. What a bunch of hypocritical assads.
It definitely raises some questions about religious freedom and tolerance in the modern world, but hey, it's important to understand their perspective, even if we don't agree with it.
Okay, so religion is a big fucking deal.
Hmm.
Got it. But what else can we dig up on these desert dwellers? Anything interesting in their DNA?
Funny you should ask. Genetic research has revealed some cool shit about their ancestry. Like, a majority of Saudis belong to a specific haplogroup called J1M267.
Haplo what now? You lost me at haplo. Break it down for us, simple folk.
Imagine it like a genetic family tree branch. It helps us track their ancestry and migration patterns over time. And this particular haplogroup links them to ancient populations in the Middle East.
So we're talking about genetic time travel here.
Yeah.
Peeking into their past.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing what we can learn from DNA these days. It shows that even seemingly isolated populations have a complex and interconnected history. And this is just one example. There's a whole world of genetic information out there waiting to be uncovered.
All right, that's some mind-blowing shit.
All right, so we've been digging into the Saudi shit, the Bedouin stuff, the crazy religious influence, and how some groups are getting seriously screwed over.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. More diverse than I expected, but also more fucked up in some ways. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around, like, what makes these Saudis tick? What are their values, their worldview, all that deep shit?
That's the heart of it, right? What shapes their whole perspective. And it really boils down to three things: tradition, family, and, no surprise here, religion. Those are the pillars of Saudi culture.
Okay, makes sense. But how does that play out in real life? Like, if I hypothetically decided to visit this crazy-ass country, what would I actually experience?
Well, first of all, get ready to be overwhelmed with hospitality. I mean, seriously overwhelmed. It's a big part of their culture, treating guests with the utmost respect.
So if I show up expecting a cup of coffee, they'll probably throw a goddamn feast and offer me a camel to ride home on.
Pretty much. They love showering guests with gifts and food, and they'll get offended if you try to refuse. It's all about honor and generosity.
That's pretty cool, actually. What about family? I know they're big on that whole extended family thing.
Oh yeah, family is everything. They often live in these massive households with multiple generations under one roof.
So like a constant family reunion. Sounds kind of claustrophobic.
It can be, for sure. And, there's definitely tension, especially with the younger generation wanting more freedom and independence.
Yeah, that's the age-old battle, right?
Yeah.
Parents clinging to tradition while their kids are out there exploring the world and doing all sorts of crazy shit.
It's a constant push and pull. But family ties run deep in Saudi Arabia. And that sense of duty to your family is deeply ingrained.
Okay, so tradition, family, religion. Got it. But what about the government? They've got that whole absolute monarchy thing going on, which seems pretty archaic to us in the West. How much control do they actually have over people's lives?
It's a complicated system. The government definitely shapes everything. The media, education, the legal system, which, as we've discussed, is based on Islamic law.
So basically, they control every aspect of life. How do people feel about that?
Well, there's a strong sense of national pride, especially among older generations. But there's also a growing undercurrent of dissent, especially among young people who are exposed to the outside world and want more freedom and political reform.
Yeah, I bet they're not too thrilled about having their lives dictated by a bunch of old dudes in robes.
It's definitely a source of tension.
What about, like, actual activism? Is there any of that going on, or do they just squash it immediately?
There are people pushing for change, but it's risky. Freedom of speech is limited, and challenging the status quo can have serious consequences.
So it's like a game of whack-a-mole. One activist pops up, and the government smacks them down. Sounds pretty bleak.
It's not easy, that's for sure. Change happens slowly, and it often comes at a price.
All right, let's shift gears for a second. We've talked about internal dynamics, but what about Saudi Arabia on the world stage? How do they interact with other countries? Are they the asshole of the Middle East, or are they trying to play nice?
Well, they're a major player, no doubt. I mean, they've got all that oil, so they wield a lot of economic power.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But how's their reputation?
It's mixed, to say the least. They're a key ally to a lot of Western countries, including the U.S., which is, controversial, but their human rights record and involvement in conflicts like the war in Yemen have drawn a lot of criticism.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to walk this tightrope between being a valuable partner and a total dick.
That's a good way to put it. They've got some close allies, but other countries view them with suspicion, even hostility. It's a complicated mess.
Okay, so basically they're the frenemy everyone has to invite to the party, even though they might cause some drama.
Got it.
Got it. But let's get back to something we touched on earlier, the women. We talked about the dress code and the guardianship thing. But I'm curious about their lives, their experiences. Are they basically prisoners in fancy abiyas, or is there more to it?
That's a good question, and it's a complex issue. It might sound crazy, but Saudi women are actually experiencing a period of change and empowerment, even with all the restrictions they face.
Wait, empowerment. In a country where they can't even have a beer with their friends or drive without a man's permission.
I know it seems contradictory, but it's true. There have been reforms in recent years giving them more rights and opportunities than ever before.
So they're like breaking free from their gilded cages.
In a way, yeah. They can drive now, travel on their own, even start businesses without needing a male guardian's approval.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
But is it all just for show? Like, is it actually changing things on the ground, or is it just window dressing for the West?
It's a bit of both, honestly. The laws have changed, but social attitudes and cultural norms take a lot longer to catch up. There's still a ton of resistance to women asserting their independence, and they still face a lot of discrimination.
So, like, they can drive, but it's still a bumpy road.
Exactly. It's a long, slow process, and there's still a long way to go before they achieve true equality.
Well, at least they're moving in the right direction, even if it's slow as hell. Who are we to judge, right? We've got our own problems to deal with over here.
That's true. Every society has its own challenges. There's no perfect system, and change is always messy.
So let's raise a glass, or a cup of non-alcoholic sparkling grape juice in this case, to the Saudis and their crazy-ass journey. They show that even the most rigid cultures can change, even if it's kicking and screaming the whole way.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the world is full of different cultures, and even if we don't always agree with them, we can still learn from them.
Well said. Now, before we get to the future of this crazy place, let's take a quick break to pay the bills. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a flash to wrap things up. All right, we're back. So we've gone deep on these Saudis, man. From their Bedouin roots to their love of falcon parties. We even talked about their weird-ass relationship with women's rights. It's a lot to process.
It is, yeah. We've covered their history, culture, the crazy religious influence, the government's control, and everything in between.
And let's be real, we've had some laughs along the way. But now I'm thinking about their future, you know? These guys are balancing tradition, religion, and modernization all at once. What's going to happen when that shit collides?
That's the big question, isn't it? Saudi Arabia is at a crossroads. There's a lot of pressure to evolve, but they're also holding on to those deep-rooted traditions. It's a tough balancing act.
So you think it'll be a slow burn or a sudden explosion?
It's hard to say for sure, but one thing's for certain, change is coming. Those younger generations are exposed to the world, you know? They want more freedom, more opportunities, and the government can't ignore that forever.
Yeah, those tick-tocking millennials are going to shake things up. But what about the old guard? Those dudes seem pretty set in their ways.
It's definitely a tug of war between the old and the new. But I think they'll find some kind of middle ground. They'll have to modernize without losing their identity, you know? Embrace the 21st century without ditching their traditions entirely.
But isn't that the struggle for every culture these days? How do you embrace the new without erasing the old?
Exactly. And for Saudi Arabia, with all their oil money and religious baggage, the stakes are even higher. They're walking a tightrope, man.
So what's your prediction, Doc?
Yeah.
What's the future hold for these desert-dwelling dudes? Flying cars, robot butlers, a sudden shift to a liberal paradise.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I think we'll see a slow but steady shift towards a more open society. They'll need to make concessions, you know, embrace some reforms if they want to stay relevant in the world. But who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us.
Gradual change, huh? So no sudden revolution. That's kind of anticlimactic.
Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, they're on a path of transformation. And with all their contradictions and complexities, it's going to be one hell of a ride.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. We've explored the good, the bad, and the ugly of Saudi Arabia. They're a fascinating bunch, even if they can be a bit backward at times. We've learned about their history, their culture, their challenges, and their unique place in the world. And honestly, I have to admit, I've gained a newfound respect for these desert-dwelling motherfuckers. They're more than just oil money and religious extremism. They're a complex and evolving society, and it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds for them.
It really is. And I think it's a reminder that no matter how different a culture might seem, there's always something we can learn from them.
Well said. So that's a wrap on this deep dive. We've laughed, we've learned, and maybe even shed a tear or two for those poor bastards who can't enjoy a cold beer on a hot day. But most importantly, we've expanded our minds and challenged our own perspectives. And that's what the deep dive is all about. We're not just here to entertain, we're here to make you think, to question, to explore the world with open minds and a healthy dose of skepticism. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay thirsty for knowledge, you beautiful bastards. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.